Hi, my name is Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian and a deconstructed former fundamentalist Christian. I was homeschooled my entire life, full way through, full on Bible based propaganda, curriculum, subjects. I got baptized 2 different times and went through confirmation before I realized that I no longer believed in anything that I had been raised to believe in. I've actually already talked a little bit on this channel about my sort of complex feelings surrounding the Reddit board fundiesnark uncensored. That video came from me mostly thinking about the way that people on that particular snark board tend to relate to the influencers who they are talking about. And, I couldn't stop thinking as I was watching Bethany Beal from Girl Defined go into her sexy wife era and sell her courses about how to have intercourse. How I felt as if she was being both exiled from more traditional Christians and also very much that the kind of discourse that happens around her on fundiesnark uncensored is the kind of discourse that would make, if not specifically Bethany, other Bethanies of the world feel like they don't have a place to kind of question and deconstruct their religious upbringing. The fundiesnark board is much, much kinder to her husband than it is to her. I'll link my original video in the description if you would like to watch it. It's from before I had a better microphone though. Thing is though, I am not the only YouTube channel who has semi-recently made a video where I took an attempt at defending Bethany Beal from Girl Defined. So there are lots of existing YouTube channels in this kind of fundiesnark or deconstruction space. The most popular and my personal favorite probably being Jen from Fundy Fridays. But many, many channels have been covering what seems to be kind of a public deconstruction that Bethany Beal's husband, Dave, has been having and that they've both been posting about on their social media. If you think you don't already know who Bethany Beal is, you almost certainly do. She's a Christian influencer and a little bit of a self-advertised boss babe. She sells courses, like I said before, about how to have sex, and also one about how to sell your own course. It's very pyramid-shaped. She and her sister, Kristen, have been running Girl Defined, which is their social media ministry, since 2016. Together, they published multiple books and also have a podcast together called The Girl Defined Show. However, for the purposes of today's video, Kristen pretty much does not matter at all. We, like the internet often does, will mostly be talking about Bethany. I made this super clear in my first video on the subject, and I will say it again here. I am no fan of Bethany Beal. She comes across as pretty ignorant, a feeling that I might feel a little bit worse about putting into words, if not for the pretty much constant stream of homophobic and transphobic posts on the Girl Defined Instagram. Homophobic, yes, but also as far as being able to sit in a room with a non-binary person and not be an outwardly hateful dick to them, she may be growing on this front. Again, not enough to make her slow down on her posting about gender roles and biological necessities and all this really bullshit things that I really don't agree with, but enough that she's maybe kind of a little bit coming around perhaps. And that's enough that there is a very specific section of YouTube that's been keeping up with her and her husband ever since Dave first said that he doesn't really identify as a Christian anymore, who have been really kind of hopeful for Bethany and her growth over the last few months. And one of those YouTube channels is the one that hosted this collaboration with Bethany. It's a channel called Zelph on the Shelf, which is run by 2 ex-Mormons who run the channel together and flew to Texas to visit with Dave and Bethany in person. This collab video actually is the only Zelph on the Shelf video that I've watched, though their videos have popped up in my suggested frequently enough that when I watched B. Haney react to the Bethany and Dave video where Bethany and Dave talked about Zelph on the Shelf, I already knew who they were talking about. As of the time that I am recording this, they've posted what was titled as part 1 of their crossover. I'm not sure when the rest of it will come out, but I feel like it won't really change much of anything that I have to say enough for me to sit on these thoughts until then, and it's almost Pride Month, so I would like to be able to focus on some gay shit this coming month. Anyway though, I have not really been keeping up with fundiesnark uncensored in quite a while. In my first video I went over a story about how I got a comment removed from there for calling the post weird, for contrasting Bethany's coloring before and after she got dick, since it's like well known that these purity culture women are virgins until marriage. I said weird post OP. I go over it more in the video. I got my comment removed for very gently being like, this is a weird post that I don't think is helpful. Which, whatever. But again, that kind of goes to show you already maybe where I'm kind of falling on the Snark subreddit in general. I happened to check back in, though, shortly after finishing my video about Swoop. I just kind of wanted to see what was going on over there, and I scrolled back far enough to see quite a bit of the backlash that Sam and Tanner from Zelph on the Shelf have received for posting the video, and I feel conflicted. Because, again, I don't already watch this channel, but trying to imagine, like, if a channel that I do watch, like Jen from Fundy Fridays or B. Haney, uploaded a super friendly buddy-buddy collab with one of their usual subjects after having, like, heavily praised them on a personal level on Instagram a week prior, I would probably really, really not like that. I would feel very weird and strange about the ethics of all of that in ways that I will unpack throughout this video. Like I said, as far as praising Bethany on Instagram, Sam from Zelph on the Shelf referred to Bethany as an intellectually curious angel, which seems to have gotten some heat on the subreddit. They also posted about how sweet Bethany is, how much meeting her in real life changed their perceptions of her, and like a jokey post about drinking margaritas with Bethany and Dave. But even without all of that context of like kind of the fact that they had become friends of some level over the course of this collab, it was always going to be pretty unsurprising to me, just based on the fact that Bethany agreed to do this, that the collab video wasn't going to be super confrontational or challenging to her. And I'm not sure that it needed to be confrontational to or challenging to Bethany. Like, at least I'm not sure that it being challenging to her would have been beneficial, you know, either for her own deconstruction or for the deconstruction of people who might really like her and now click on a deconstructed former Mormon YouTube channel for the first time and be like, oh, maybe I can start thinking about the world outside of the walls of my church. Like, if this had taken place in some parallel universe where Sam and Tanner got Bethany on camera and like laid into her until she cried and apologized for her wrongdoings, I don't think that would have helped Bethany to start consider not being a Christian anymore, or to consider not using her Christian beliefs to try to control other people. Something she says she doesn't do, but that like is, I mean, it's girl defined. She is like defining womanhood. She is pretty much by right of what she is doing and how she is currently doing this. For as long as she's still working with Girl Defined, nothing Bethany actually says about how she's not trying to tell people how to live their lives is gonna ring quite true for me. And to be clear, I think the fact that Bethany seems to have no intention of ever apologizing, even for harm that she seems to know by now that she's done, as far as reperpetuating purity culture bullshit, you know, she's said in her 24 Hours with Paul and Morgan video that she's not ever going to apologize. She doesn't have any intentions of it. She doesn't see what good it would do. And it's very clear she doesn't feel like an apology is something that she owes somebody, but also she does kind of sometimes, and especially in conversations like this that aren't hosted on the Girl Defined page, kind of try to tap dance away from some previously once more firmly held beliefs of hers, in my opinion, from my reading on this. And also important here, I don't think that at this current point of deconstruction that Bethany Beal is currently at, that it would even be possible for her to put together an apology that anyone who actually would want it from her could, like, believe enough to accept. And I truly, truly feel like Sam and Tanner from Zelph on the Shelf know that. Like I said, they're both ex-Mormons, and looking at their channel, they've shared a lot about their deconstruction there, which makes both them covering Dave's deconstruction as he started to do that on like a public scale make sense, and also make their channel being something Dave would want to watch make sense. And this interview with Bethany and Dave is really more of just a conversation. Like, they do ask a few clarifying questions, but I really don't get the feeling watching this that either of them had some particular investment in making sure that they held Bethany Beal's feet to the fire, or that they even were particularly interested in wanting to watch her squirm. Which I think is an admirable feeling, but not one that was shared by whatever portion of their audience came from Snark Uncensored. And it is kind of more the reaction to this that I want to talk about than their video itself, though I'll bring the video back up again later. People are trying to post to, like, warn Sam and Tanner that, like, oh, you should be careful because Bethany may be trying just as much to win you to Christianity as she does to others. Not the case, I don't think. I don't think she's trying to be a witness on this particular video where she's talking about how she misses feeling closeness to God. I think she was just being vulnerable and being a person. And people post to express their hurt at Sam and Tanner for platforming somebody who still is kind of perpetually posting these harmful beliefs via cutesy little Canva slides on Instagram. Which is valid, but also worth noting that these harmful beliefs that Bethany is flagging are beliefs that would be harmful to the people who run the Zelph on the Shelf channel. Tanner is non-binary. And by that I mean basically, okay, I think it's fine and kind of right to think that it's weird that somebody would willingly bring somebody who is still actively homophobic and transphobic onto their channel. But also, as somebody affected by transphobia, Tanner made the decision to put themselves directly in the line of that, which doesn't mean that they're disconnected from the fact that it exists. It means that they're kind of willing to use themselves as exposure for Bethany to get used to the idea of being in the same room as a trans person, possibly. And another main current genre of post here is people, feeling especially betrayed by the praise that another adjacent channel we'll talk about more in a bit, called the Antibot, gave to this video and to Sam and Tanner for making it. One thing that I think is being lost in these discussions is that the Reddit board is like a snark board. It is for snark specifically, and that is much less of a defined focus of a lot of YouTube channels that cover similar subjects to what is discussed in the snark board. So I guess to make that make any goddamn sense at all, I should go ahead and define snark just like as an internet word, and then also I will define it for our purposes. So straight up just Googling the definition on this one. Our dictionary definition for snark is critical or mocking comments made in an indirect or sarcastic way. But, not like an online definition. That's just if something is snarky, right? So I went ahead and kind of made up our own definition of it. I actually did too. So snark definition number 1, Ophi version, is criticism being brought against influencers/internet figures in a way that is not meant to be constructive to that influencer themselves. Or 2, complaints about social media posts / the beliefs / rhetoric that are phrased either just for the sake of expressing frustration or connecting with other people who are in agreement with your criticisms of the influencer in question. Meaning, some of these posts might be, hey, I really hate Bethany, I hate how she smiles with her mouth open in photos, and I think she looks like a toddler, and like being really mean about that. And some of them might be like, hey, here's 5 things that really bothered me in the latest episode of the Girl Defined podcast that I want to talk about. And while we're at it, I guess I also probably should give a working definition for what deconstruction is when I'm using it in this context. So again, dictionary says, a method of critical analysis of philosophical and literary language which emphasizes the internal workings of language and conceptual systems, the relational quality of meaning, and the assumptions implicit in forms of expression. Tons of words. I kind of have condensed that down into what it means specifically as we're talking about it in this former fundamentalist religious space, and that is, in my own phrasing, going from being raised in or fully buying into a religion to questioning it. ending up either fully disconnecting from their original beliefs or remaining with the religion but in a different capacity than was previously held. And the reason that this is relevant is because while people who have deconstructed are often snarkers, I would seriously doubt that any sizable percentage of snarkers is made up by people who are currently in the process of deconstructing. I think largely snarkers are people who either were Christians and have deconstructed from that, or people who were never Christian but are looking for community by expressing, kind of rightful frustration given our, cultural society and the political movement that we are currently in, wanting to express frustration about Christianity, Christian politics, etc. And just like personal vibes for what I mean by the difference between deconstructed and deconstructing, I, as a deconstructed Christian, can make jokes and roll my eyes about things like hell or the devil, and while I was in the process of deconstructing, while I was still being told disbelief was not only a sin, but the only unforgivable one, even wondering if I was allowed to be sad that this God I was meant to believe in sent people to hell would make me have these huge, intense stomach aches that I now understand were probably just anxiety. It would freak me out so bad. And a lot of the first video is, like I said, about the exact way that I think snark boards can be unhelpful for deconstruction, but still kind of a needed pressure valve for those people who have a right to be frustrated with the harmful Christian influencers, etc. Except what this results in, I think, is the space consisting both of people who have deconstructed, people who didn't need to, and the feeling from the people who have deconstructed is, oh, we're all here because we've been there, and the feeling from the people who are not there because they've deconstructed is, we're all doing something good, and also all the former Christians who are here who agree with us would have deconstructed sooner had they just found our snark board earlier. Of course, that's not the only two groups of people that make up the snark board, but it's the two who I think are most relevant to this conversation and to the criticism that Zelph on the Shelf and later on the Antibot receive. And I also think that there's this feeling from the people who frequent the snark board of, oh, this is part of our in-group, when they see content outside of it that criticizes many of those same things or people. I don't know actually to what extent, I could be wrong about this, I don't know to what extent Zelph on the Shelf or the Antibot have previously been involved with the snark Reddit in particular, but I do know that everyone featured on both Zelph on the Shelf and the Antibot have personally deconstructed, which I think just gives them a license to talk about related subjects on their YouTube channel, whether or not they are longtime snark board users. To me, though, that feeling of betrayal seems a little misguided in terms of, I'm reading these posts thinking, okay, they're talking about this like it was for them when it might have not been on the subreddit. I feel like these channels on YouTube are intentionally attempting to be a much more gentle off-ramp that you can find out of religion than is offered on that subreddit. And with that approach in mind, it makes a lot of sense to me to want to approach the subject from this kind of friendly empathy lens. I also think another factor here is these are people who are making content with their faces and their personality attached, and just from experience, you rewatch the video so many times while you edit it, you are making neural pathways for yourself by saying things out loud to begin with and then listening to yourself say them over and over again. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you wouldn't really want so much to dwell in all the miserable shit while you're editing and recording. It just can be really draining, so I understand wanting to take a more positive channel route. But also, while I don't think that this is a situation that's likely to repeat itself with another channel other than Zelph on the Shelf when it comes to deconstruction content, I still don't really think that Bethany Beal strictly needed to be in an episode. And I do understand if audience members of Zelph or the Antibot who were further into their deconstruction and feel like maybe they are being pivoted away from if the friendly angle is the new one and it's in service of the fundamentalists or the people who are less far into their deconstruction journey. Like, what a feeling of, like, frustration and erasure if you feel like everything in the world is already so friendly to these people who think so poorly of you and who you love and what you do with your life, and then so is this YouTube channel that you felt like wasn't that. I also think, though, that there are really interesting conversations to be had here when it comes to how actually accessible most of these Christian influencers probably actually are. Like, not that they all might say yes to coming on someone's channel, again, like I said, with this not feeling super likely to repeat itself. But these are usually pretty firmly, from my understanding, like middle class people and not super rich influencers. I wouldn't be surprised at all, actually, to learn if, in many cases, people who cover their grift successfully profit off of what Bethany is doing more than Bethany herself does. And to be clear, like, I don't think that's bad, or that Bethany isn't a little bit of a grifter, or that people shouldn't be able to document her little girl boss grifts. I just think it probably makes you a little bit more likely to be nicer to the person you were covering if, when you meet them and they're so nice to you, they're also maybe doing a little bit less well than you are financially, or less well than you had, like, expected they would be. And if Bethany's husband hadn't already been public about deconstructing, I think I would have more of a hardline rule about this. Like, if anyone put Paul and Morgan on their channel, I will think they are doing some deeply dumb shit in a way that I won't say about Zelph on the Shelf. I mean, I don't dislike the Antibot. Much like Zelph on the Shelf, I have not watched more than one or two of the videos on that channel, but I did also kind of think it was kind of misguided when she called somebody toxic for responding to a message that Paul from Paul and Morgan had left, where he commented and thanked them for talking about how the subreddit is toxic. Somebody responded, "Shut up, Paul," which I think is pretty mild for things that that man deserves to hear if he intentionally walks into a deconstruction space. But I also do understand, I guess, the impulse to want to defend him. I do think, though, it really did drive another wedge between people on the subreddit who are really interested in engaging in Snark and Taylor, the Antibot, when she did defend Paul, at least so far as saying, this is why you guys on the subreddit are toxic. Like, to be clear, she didn't say Paul didn't do anything wrong, but that is kind of the implication in saying, this is why you guys are toxic, after somebody says something as mild as "shut up, Paul." If Paul wants to talk shit, I feel like he can do that on his own platform, and this is Taylor's platform, so if she wants him to be able to do that there, that's also fine, I guess. I just don't think you're obligated to be the kindest host to somebody who came into your house where your people live to antagonize the people watching your videos. Like, even just removing people responding to him rather than being like, this is why you're toxic, probably would have flagged as less of a betrayal to the fundiesnark subreddit. But also, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with literally anything that they said about the ways that the fundiesnark subreddit can be toxic. Again, I've made a whole video about that. Theirs likely might have come out in a way that would have made the subreddit very angry to hear, even if it wasn't intentionally phrased that way. You know, kind of accusing them of doing Christianity without the Christianity, comparing the fundiesnark board to the time that the Antibot's partner spent in anti-social justice warrior forms. But also, like, they kind of were making points. And maybe if you want to be a deconstruction channel and not a snark channel, you do kind of have to do that. Make it clear where you're standing and who exactly you're wanting to appeal to, i.e. the people who aren't being super extreme on the Reddit, but who might feel the same way you do and not post there as much or anymore, or the people who only post the kind of helpful and useful things that they specifically call out in their video as being helpful and useful. The line with this is going to continue to be messy, I think, and continue to be something that I have to kind of feel out how I feel about in my gut on a case-by-case basis if more things like this were to happen with other channels, though probably not something I'll usually make videos about. I think when it comes to actively platforming somebody with harmful beliefs, like to the extent of full-on physically having them in your YouTube video in something other than clip form of something they've already published, calling them an angel, telling your audience how much you personally like them, that is going to be something that might change the way that your audience perceives you and the values that they thought that you shared with them. You know, it reminds me of that quote about how being nice to everyone isn't truly being kind, because if you're nice to everybody, you're not kind to the people who are most impacted by the cruel people you're being kind to. But also, I lost track of how many alsos I'm on. Due to the way the world works, a lot of people who are deconstructed, who are queer, who are deeply hurt by the rhetoric people spread, do still end up feeling warm feelings for those people at times because they're people. And often people who have deconstructed will have religious family members, you know, and there is kind of this feeling of like being a force for normalization, maybe, once you've gone out into the real world and seen that you can be whoever you want to be. Even though it hurts, like, speaking from experience, it hurts when somebody is homophobic and they love you in a way that is, like, so clearly not full or complete. They love you in a way that is, like, cognitively dissonant about your lesbianism. Just speaking from experience. That hurts and really sucks, but also you giving them something to feel that dissonance about kind of can be that grain of sand in the clam that turns into a pearl, right? They might love you enough that they think, okay, I used to feel this way, and now that's my sister, my cousin, my daughter, you know? So having exposure to people who have deconstructed, who aren't Christians, who didn't have the whole world stop when they stopped believing in God, that kind of thing is far more likely to impact the way that not just this specific Bethany Beal they're speaking to conceptualizes what her life might be like if she's deconstructed, but also all the other Bethany Beals of the world. Other homeschooled stay-at-home daughters who feel totally trapped by the weight of their religion. People who are afraid to doubt it because they're being told that that is a sign of weakness, or that they're going to go to hell when they die, no matter how much they've, like, accepted Jesus. And I guess, while I don't agree with it in terms of it being a decision that I would make for my channel, I do truly understand how somebody could run the math and decide that that might be more in line with what they want to do. To let themselves be an exposure therapy tool for somebody who's trying to deconstruct. And really, that comes down to the person who is deciding to put themselves in the path of that more so than to other people. Like, they let a homophobic person come onto their YouTube channel, but it's not as if they let her sit there and give a PowerPoint presentation of all of her little gender role canvas slides, right? I don't know. I am super interested in what you think of this one. What do you think of YouTube channels that follow Christian influencers directly engaging with them? Are you for it, against it, case by case like me? Mostly I felt similarly to this as I did to Swoop and the toxic gossip train thing, just that it is an interesting lens to use to think about my own content and things I would want to do or not do with it. Though I'm definitely not looking to be specifically in the deconstruction space, and even less interested in ever having a conversation with Bethany Beal at all, let alone using it for channel content. If you are interested in more videos from me or in helping to support me financially, I am on Patreon, and I have a Ko-fi where you can make a one-time donation if you would like to. I put the videos that I referenced in this one in my description below, and also just a Be Haney video too, because I mentioned her and I very much like her content. And again, like, the fact that I don't personally watch Zelph on the Shelf content or the Antibot shouldn't be taken to mean that I'm saying literally anything negative about their channel. I just tend to only watch a couple of people talk about fundamentalists because it's just kind of like, it's something that I already deeply know. So if I'm coming at it from the deconstructed angle, I tend to want to watch maybe somebody like Be Haney, who still is a Christian, talk about it, or somebody like Fundy Fridays, who was my introduction to the Snark world, talk about it. But I think it's really cool and great and helpful that people want to make content for people who are earlier into the stages of deconstruction. Just, I genuinely don't know where the line falls between having a deconstruction-focused page and knowing that your audience is largely people who have deconstructed, and also not making them feel abandoned as you are kind of softening your outreach approach to other people less far into the deconstruction arena. It's just all really interesting for me to think about, and I love talking to you all about stuff. I would love to know what you think in the comment section below. It's just really interesting to me, and you all had such amazing, wonderful takes and things to talk about with that swoop video, so I figured we could talk about it here if you would like. I've got some videos in the works for Pride Month coming up this June. I also just want to thank you so much for 2000. That is absolutely bananas. It's almost June. It'll be June tomorrow. I started in December, 6 months, and 2,000 followers is so much further than I thought that I would be by now. I love you. I love making videos for you. I'll be back to talk about something else very soon. Thank you so much for watching.